Many people waiting.
We have, yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Gray's Westminster Friday live stream. Please, first of all, tell us how do we sound. We have Gray in the studio who's going to tell us all about early Nikon years. So if I was thinking I could do that, but let's be honest, I can't. You know, I can tell you all about digital stuff, but
yes, he can.
Exactly, but something to do with the beginnings and origins of Nikon. I think Gray would be the best person to tell us all about this. So hope everyone is well. We've got people watching from all over the world. Hello from Florida. Hello from Yorkshire, Chelmsford, Australia. Okay, well, so many people here. So hope you all enjoy it. Grab yourself a cup of tea, I would say, you know, and let's get on with it. Coffee Fund is open. If you haven't given us a like yet, well, we haven't done anything yet for them to give us a like, but hopefully, if you know us, definitely give us a like, and that will help to spread the live stream all over the YouTube, and YouTube will recommend it to a lot of people to watch.
That would be very helpful, actually.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tell me, Gray, how did Nikon start?
Well, it was back in 1917, and as a matter of some urgency, there was a necessity to combine three different optical companies into one, which was a company called Nippon Kogaku, which means Japan Optical.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, Nippon is Japan, Kogaku is optical, okay.
That's right, yeah. And so they formed, and the plan was to make a really first class optical company, and it was the company that would eventually change its name to Nikon, which was a name that was easier, particularly for Westerners, to pronounce.
So I assume Nippon Kogaku. So we got Ni-ko. Where's the N came in at the end?
Well, I mean, we're kind of moving forward a bit here, but, you know, just for the sake of clarity, what they did was when they made their first camera, which we now know as the Nikon 1, which was a 35 millimeter rangefinder camera, they called it the Nikon, and they got the name from the NI from Nippon and the KO from Kogaku, and they wanted to make the name strong, so they added the letter N, because there was some talk of it being called the Nicorette, which wasn't a strong enough name for them, and Nikon is obviously a much more punchy name, easier to create logos for, but we're moving a bit ahead, really.
Well, moving ahead, I'm looking at the chat. Seth is saying hello. He's very excited to see you. Seth Miranda.
Seth? Oh, Seth.
Yes.
Hello, Seth.
Yes, and now
you're on board with us.
Well, normally he comes in halfway through.
Does he?
Exactly, but knowing you here,
yes,
you know, he made it earlier.
Bless his heart.
We have a first question, and I think I can answer this one.
Okay.
Because all the other ones are probably I won't be. But this one, the question was, did Nikon ever made a wide lens like Canon? And I know they did at least two lenses, 7200, 2.8G VR1, and 300 f4D lens, autofocus one. So they had two versions. Those were sold in Japan only. And I remember that we used to import those from Japan back in the day. Were there any other wide lenses that you're aware of?
Did you mention the 70-200?
Yes.
Yeah. I only know those two. Yeah. And they were called Safari lenses.
Safari.
Yeah.
And we assume that the white color is basically, it reflects the sunlight a little bit better, so it keeps the lens cooler.
Yeah, and also if you're out in intense heat, you know, the black tends to absorb the heat and make the lens a bit too hot.
Oh, I see.
For those sort of languid latitudes.
It's very interesting. I assume, obviously, Nikon made the rangefinder lenses that were silver, not white, but silver.
Yeah, they were that sort of highly polished chrome, and until they eventually went to black and made them a lot less weighty. They weren't the heavy brass lenses.
Some people were asking about which companies the Nippon Kogaku was formed from, and Nikon USA is telling us the names of those companies. It's Tokyo Keiki Company, and then mirror division of Iwaki Glass, and also Fuji Lens Manufacturing. So that they were all merged together to create Nippon Kogaku KK and subsequently Nikon of today.
Yeah.
Fantastic. What happened next, Gray?
Well, they started really at their factory, which is called the Ohi plant, and I think you've got a shot somewhere there. We've got an illustration of the early building, and it was quite a historic place because there was a sort of a cauldron of invention, and that started there all the way through. Right up until quite late into their SLRs and DSLRs, but was eventually, they had to demolish it because there are certain earthquake standards in Japan, and it was felt that this building would not be safe. So it was all torn down, and they've now built this huge new building, which is actually a very bullish statement for their future.
Is that the factory that's of history?
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to have one. So did Nikon Japan send you one?
Yes. Well, there have been some very significant designers at Nikon, and I should come back to the original. I should come to the original one later, a little bit later in this program. But although he retired a few years ago, Mr. Tetsuro Goto, who was a good chum of ours, and we've worked with him quite a bit. He designed everything with his team, I think from the Nikon F3. He was involved in it with the creation of it in association with another gentleman.
Great. If you just repeat that again, please. I think we were buffering for a moment, so I wonder if people lost you. Yeah, just
okay.
the last couple of sentences.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know when it stopped, but anyway, we were fortunate really to get to know one of the chief designers from the range from the F3 up to and including the DF, and his name was Mr. Tetsuro Goto. He's now retired, but still we're in regular touch with him. And when this historic factory was being demolished, he invited me over to Japan for a private tour. Unfortunately, it was unworkable for me to go over at that time. So what they did was a bit like the Berlin Wall in a way. They, can you hear me okay? A bit like the Berlin Wall. They made these fragments, and he sent me some across that I could have, and I was able to pass them out to sort of friends and customers who were major collectors, which I've done. Yeah, so that was Mr. Goto-san.
Those rocks are probably going for millions on eBay nowadays.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so that was the factory.
That was the factory, yeah. And in 1921, they manufactured binoculars. They're very compact, and they're called the Micron binoculars. And I think we've got an illustration that we can show you. In fact, they did a reproduction a number of years ago. They did a black one and they did a chrome one, and they're really fantastic, and they sold quite well. Well, we sold quite a few of them here at Gray's of Westminster.
Well, I've read that they've reissued them in 1948, times 4 times 6, and also in 1997.
Yeah.
So I was looking at them on eBay.
Of course.
You start to prepare for the live stream, and then you just go on eBay and you spend money. So apparently they're 2 lists at the moment, about £100 each.
How much?
£100. But
the reproduction, or
well, I think I think both are reproduction, but one, I think the two I saw, they were from 1948, because it said Nippon Kogaku ×6, but also I think, like, I didn't see the full full names, but I think it said Occupied Japan. So I assume if it's Occupied Japan, it would be 1948.
Yeah, MIOJ.
Yeah,
that would be an original then.
And then so it's 1921. It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's absolutely incredible.
And at that same time, Nikon invited 8 German engineers down to Japan to really help the staff there create optical lenses and raise their quality standards, and which they did. They made these lenses called Anytar, Anytar, and they made a number of them. The first ones were used on a camera called the Lily hand camera.
The Lily hand camera. Yeah. Okay.
And we've got a shot here.
Let's put the shot up. Here we go. And I'm going to show the lens as well.
Yeah.
That should be up and running now.
Good. Well, there it is. They only made 20 of these. This was, I think, a 6x9 size on glass plates. They made 20 of these cameras. So if you find one in a boot sale or somewhere random, I think if you acquire it, you'll have a big smile on your face when you then try and sell it through an auction house. And I wish you success. And I should point out that for this episode, we did quite a bit of research in order to get images, and I'm very grateful to Uli Koch, who is the author of this book, which he produced for the 100th anniversary of Nikon. It's a very weighty tome. It is a staggering book. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of images and things that I had not been aware of, and we have these for sale in the shop. There we go. I don't know if you can see.
I'm just gonna wait, since we're gonna go full frame, and then
okay,
gonna show it again. So here we go. So that is the book. It's quite a hefty book, and a huge amount of research that went into it.
And it still sells really, really well. And the other images were supplied by our friend and master photographer Tony Hurst, whose work is celebrated in this book. And this was, again, created for the 100th anniversary. And it's got Tony's staggering work in it. It's limited edition, signed and numbered, with an introduction by Gillian Greenwood, the senior features editor of Nikon Owner. So that's those two.
Yeah, I think this book is so good because if you like product photography, is one thing, but then this is product photography. It's taken to 11, really, because first of all, it's Nikon cameras that we all love, but also just like if you've seen Tony Hurst working, and he would build a set around one image and would take him hours or maybe days just to create that image. And then when you see the final result, it's incredible because he tries to get everything as much as possible in the camera. So there's very little Photoshop involved in those images. So definitely I would recommend you, if you haven't got one, and if you want to have a book of photographs of Nikon equipment, this is probably the best book available.
Absolutely. In fact, I was fortunate a number of years ago to, Tony's based in Blackrock in Dublin, and I went over and stayed with him and his wife one weekend, and we spent a day in his darkroom, so you can tell how long ago it was, and seeing him light a camera and what he put into it, I felt like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It was a masterclass in professionalism and left a huge impression on me. If you get to see his work, I highly recommend you do so.
So we got to the Lily camera.
Yeah.
What was next, Gray?
Well, after that, we are sort of we're coming along. Let me find out where. What's perhaps not so well known is that Nikon also produced lenses for the Canon Hansa rangefinder camera, because Canon at that time did not have an optical division or a way of doing it. And I think we've got a picture by Tony Hurst of the Canon Hansa.
Yes, we do. Let's find it. Here we go.
There we are. And so if you look on that, it'll say Nippon Kogaku.
You mean Canon, the famous printer company?
Yes. I mean, interesting enough, during World War II, Nippon Kogaku had about 25,000 employees at 22 plants, and production was mainly for military purposes, like binoculars, surveying things, transits. And I think you've probably got some military shots there.
Let's have a look. Let's see.
Oh, yeah, that top right-hand corner there.
Here we go. Let's get one going. Perfect. So that's going to change that.
Yeah. There we are. We've actually had a set of these a number of years ago. And so if you look, they're kind of tall like this, and they've got these things going like so. And some of them were developed, if you were in trenches, you could see over the top of the trench without having, the top of your head taken away. And they did an awful lot during that period for their military. Hence so many factories, so many employees.
I guess that would work well on submarine as well.
Yes. Yeah, good luck.
All right, let's have a look at the chart while we have it here. So let's see. Would you consider a classic Nikon camera? That was the question.
What would I consider?
Yeah.
Well, there's a few. If we're going back to these early days, I would say the Nikon SP rangefinder, and the P stood for professional, and I think it's really the zenith of their achievements in rangefinder, and still very popular. I think we've got one or two in our second-hand stock. Those are the ones that sell quite well to collectors and increasingly users these days. And after that, well, the Nikon F, I would say.
And the rest is history, isn't it?
The rest is very much history. Yeah. And I mean, really, this, let me just find...
I just want to say thank you to Champagne Sumo for that question, as well as the coffee fund. Thank you.
Well, yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. The coffee is always very welcome.
Absolutely.
The Nikon F, which we'll come to in a short while, which was their first 35mm single lens reflex, which was introduced in 1959. Mm-hmm. But there was a period. If we get, did we do the Nikon one yet?
We haven't got to Nikon one yet. Okay. We can find that. Let's have a look. Am I missing it?
There we are.
There we are.
Yeah.
That's one of the Tony Hurst shots.
Yeah. So
tell us about Nikon One. What's the significance of it?
Well, they started working. I mean, they'd completed blueprints on this camera by 1946. And because what they were doing, they were occupied as a country by the Allied forces under the command of General MacArthur. And they very much needed foreign investment to rebuild Japan after the the major conflicts, and they had come up with two ideas. One which was a 2¼ square twin lens reflex called the Nikon Flex, and a 35mm cross-coupled rangefinder. That the rangefinder system itself was loosely based on a Leica, and the design loosely based on a Contax, combining the best of both worlds. And so they bought out what was originally just called the Nikon, but we now know, or we now call it the Nikon 1 because it was the first. There weren't that many made. And one of the reasons was they couldn't export it because the format size was 24 by 32. And they would have had problems with mounting color slides.
That's true. As we all know, the 35mm format is 24 by 36 and not 32.
Yeah. So what they did was they recalled the cameras and they widened the film gate. From 2432 to 2434. And they got the camera, and because it was halfway between the original Nikon size and the Leica size, which was 2436, it was halfway in between. They stamped an M for medium. And very early Nikons, the M is slightly out of alignment with the serial number. Later ones, they're perfectly, and they kept that going. It was a knob wind camera, really, and after the M, we then had the first that had flash synchronization.
I see.
And this is why we call them the S series.
I thought they would release a large version as well, SL, that they would widen into 36mm, It's basically the original JPEG quality. Like you can now set the JPEG quality on your camera to small, medium, and large.
Yeah.
So that was the original one.
Well, I suppose, I suppose there's some truth in that. And it really wasn't until the Nikon S2 where they went to a 2436 format. They went from a knob wind to a lever wind and improved the shutter speed dial, and it became a very serious export for them. And they still sell now because they're reasonable prices and they're very, very usable.
That's true. Did they have a half frame as well?
Yes, the S3M.
S3M.
We've got one. They are super, super rare. They took, obviously on a 36 exposure roll, they took 72 exposures. In fact, I think one recently sold for, I think it was something like $60,000 at auction.
That's Leica money, isn't it?
That's right. That's Leica money.
There's a lot of love for Nikon rangefinders in the chat. David Muscora says, I still use my SP on the streets. And Colin Murphy said that the S3 rangefinder in 1958, only 14,000 units were made.
Which one? The S3. Yes, that's right, because that was a slightly cut down version of an SP, but otherwise identical, really. Yeah.
If you haven't given us a like yet, definitely hit that thumbs up button.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Did we put up that picture of Mr. Fukita?
No, but we're going to do that now. Absolutely.
And
let's do that.
I wanted to introduce this gentleman. His name is, we know him as Mr. Fukita. And he was responsible for running the design teams from the Nikon 1 all the way up to and including the Nikon F. Now, there's a bit of an urban legend that the whole F series of cameras were called the F, as in F for Fukita. I've heard some people who say it's true and other people saying it's just urban and it's not true at all. I haven't been able to find out a definitive answer. I wish I could. Sadly, Mr. Fukita is no longer with us, and probably it was, from what I understand from Robert Rotoloni, who had interviewed him a number of years ago. Robert Rotoloni is the founder of the Nikon Historical Society and wrote the magnum opus on the Nikon rangefinder system. Said he was an extremely clever but very modest man, as a lot of Japanese gentlemen appear to be, and the Japanese in general.
Is that book still in production, or is it out of print?
Sadly, it's out of print. I wish I could get some. I've got one very dog-eared copy here where the spine is falling apart because I've used it so much for research over the years. But then we come to a point where I have to. Actually, I think you've got a shot in a couple of factory shots there.
Yeah, let's have a look at those.
Which that might be of interest.
Got a little production line here.
Yeah.
It's going to come up any minute now.
Yeah. Now, from what I can gather, this shot is from a production line for the Nikon Fs, and there you can see them working very industriously. And I've been in their former factory in the north of Japan at the Sendai factory, and they work. They're very diligent, and there's no music playing. There's there wasn't when I was there. They work very hard, and if someone steps off to maybe use the loo or something, the minute they walk off the station, someone takes their place. So there's no stops in the production of it, and you can see it from there. And I think there's a slightly earlier picture in black and white of a gentleman examining a lens, which I think is rather a lovely sort of historic shot, really.
He looks like he's concentrating on it.
He does, doesn't he? Yeah.
But it's just, you're looking at the offices of all those Palo Alto, in California, all those Googles and Facebook offices where they have table tennis and juice bar and everything. And good old days, you come to work and you work.
You work, yeah.
Exactly.
No, you absolutely do.
The gentleman looks very young.
Yeah.
But the thing about this is that they would normally start in the company, maybe by the age of 18 or 20, and then they would work there for their whole life.
It was very much a life career. And one of the things that really impressed me was, my first visit to Japan was you could have been retired, and they kept an area called the auditor's room, and not as in a financial auditor, but just one who listens and speaks or computes. And these gentlemen were allowed to come in, these former senior engineers and designers, and sit around, and young execs and young engineers could come in and say, how did you handle this particular problem? Because they value that massive experience that that their staff had, and so you had the value of not losing technology. Because one of the things is, if it's not written down, or if it isn't, if it isn't in some way recorded, then you can have whole swathes of information completely disappear because they're only in the memory of a certain period. And I think there's been a lot of attempts really to make sure that historically these things don't go missing.
Well, that's the thing. We're talking about the craft of manufacturing, and obviously with digital cameras everywhere now, the film camera, just repair of film cameras and servicing, this craft is basically dies down. And now when we have, let's say, companies coming back to producing film cameras like Pentax, they said they had to bring all those old gentlemen who worked for Pentax back in the day, bring them back to teach the youngsters.
That's right.
How to create a shutter, how to, how to work all those gears and everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's very, very important. And I'm glad it's kind of continues, at least, because this information then can be passed on and not lost.
And well, you're absolutely right. And in fact, in an illustration of that, in the year 2000, Nikon wanted to celebrate that, the new millennium, by bringing back a reproduction of the original Nikon S3 called the year 2000 model. And so they went back to their some of the original engineers that had worked on it and brought them in to look at what they were trying to do. And in one part of the OE factory, they found a supply of the original leather that they had used on their Nikon rangefinder cameras, and that original leather was used on these reproduction models. So they did an S3. They did a beautiful one a couple of years later in black. They did a reproduction also of the SP, and so the value they put on it, you're not just sort of, I don't know, put out to to pasture.
Yeah,
you are valued, which I think is very important, because a company like Nikon wouldn't be the company they are without the work of the people. They're not just cogs in the machinery; they are the machinery.
That's true. People in the chat are complimenting you for the wealth of knowledge that you have, and I'm very privileged to be next to you, because every day we speak and I learn something new.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much. No, thank you.
Then we have David Cruz, who we had on the live stream last week. Definitely check it out, the drunk wedding photographer. He said, I want the Nikon camera that used in the police department, and it takes vertical photos. I assume that's the Nikon FM2 that we saw recently?
Yeah.
Was that the one?
Yeah, the half frame.
The half frame, yeah.
Yeah, it's... we actually, I don't know if I got it here. Let me just check again. I don't know if you know, but it's probably come up that we publish a magazine called Nikon Owner, which is over 20 years old now. And it's really beautifully produced, and we featured this particular camera. Yes, here it is. It's called the FM2 half frame. I don't know if there's a...
Let's have a look. Let's see if we can get it closer. Again, another shot by Tony Hurst.
Yeah, and there were very, very few of these made. They were made at the request of a police force it was just a very small amount. Here we are. One of the rarest in the world, one of 34.
Only 34. Wow.
Only 34 were used. So, and I should mention, as Gillian has asked me to, is that we're doing a special for the next 3 days, aren't we, on Nikon Owner? You can take out what we call a digital subscription, which is the normal price annually is £49, but we're doing a complimentary access. It's £49, but you'll be able to have access to over 80 back issues of the magazine that you can read. And it's a special price for those of you on the live stream today. You should use the Nikon Owner Shop to join, and the code is KON10, KON 10. And
that's me.
That's him. I think there'll be a link there. So what we do try and cover in Nikon Owner is is a broad range, really from the early days right through to the most contemporary of things. And but one particular section is always devoted to early Nikon history, and all the photographs are by the master, Mr. Tony Hurst. So that's the this is the latest issue of the magazine here. So well recommended.
Okay, let's go through the chat. So Chris Thompson is saying, hi, I'm planning a tourist trip to Japan next year, 2025. I want to include Nikon Museum in Shinagawa. Do you recommend it? And if there's more than one in Japan? So Nikon Museum opened about 5 years ago, didn't it? In Tokyo?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. In fact, when Grays of Westminster were, in 2014, we were granted a coat of arms by Her Majesty's College of Arms in London, and we were the first camera shop in the world to being given this extraordinary accolade. And the president of the Nikon Corporation at the time came over to the UK and sort of discussed this with us, and we had a lunch with him, and he said that he'd always been inspired by what we did here, and that he was going to be opening a Nikon museum, and it is really worth the visit. And you know, if you're going, you can't miss it. The other place to look at is the JC2 Museum, which is a camera museum.
Okay.
Now, the reason for JC2, on early Nikon cameras and early Nikon lenses, you'll sometimes see this little gold ellipsis sticker, and it says JC2 approved or something like that. And because the Japanese had a reputation at the time as being copiers of things, it was the sticker was to show that this had been gone through the highest of tests and was really high quality equipment. And the JC2 Museum in Japan as houses hundreds and hundreds of cameras and lenses by all manufacturers. So if you're into photography, well worth a visit.
Definitely. On my next trip to Japan, I'll definitely go there.
Okay.
But it's also good to go to those places because sometimes they sell very little and nice souvenirs that are only limited to those places. So let's say Nikon Museum in Japan, you can't buy from them online unless you live in Japan.
That's
so right. They were selling F3, F5 watches, some fountain pens with Nikon logos, all this interesting stuff. So definitely get a few of those, send us one. Yes.
I've had a couple of Nippon Kagaku reproduction things that they sold. We should probably come to DDD.
Definitely. Before we do that, just a quick question from Michael Reed. Was there cooperation on lens design between camera lenses and microscope lenses at Nikon? I assume yes.
Was there what?
Cooperation on the lens design between microscope department and lens department.
Well, I assume so, but frankly, my knowledge of the microscope era is microscopically thin.
Yeah, I think we need Becky for this because she will go probably eventually from macrophotography and just evolve to microscopes, isn't it?
That's right. You know. In fact, the gentleman I spoke to about earlier who did the Nikon 100th anniversary book and also the 3-volume Nikon F book also did a book on the first 50 years of Nikon microscopes, which again is a massive tome. So I'm sorry I can't answer you more fully.
Should should probably do another live stream just on microscopes.
Oh, yes.
You know, once we spend a month doing research and reading all
Yeah,
this
I think
out.
it would need a month's con.
In the meantime, I want to thank David Liu. He says, great stream. Thanks for the research and time. And also, thanks again, Champagne Sumo. He says, I have a call our guest, Professor Gray.
Oh, I feel like something out of Harry Potter. Well, that's very kind of you.
All right. So, DDD.
David Douglas Duncan. He was Life magazine photographer. And in the spring of 1950, he was visiting Japan to photograph, Japanese fine arts. And while he was there, he made a fortuitous discovery. A Japanese photographer, Mr. Yun Miki, took his photograph, and Duncan said to him, that's not going to come out. It's too dark in here. And the next day, Yun Miki came back and showed him this photograph, and Duncan was astonished by this, and said, "What's that?" And he said, "I'm using these are Nikkor lenses made by Nippon Kogaku." And he said, Duncan said to him, "You must take me down there. You must introduce me." So they got hold of because he was so impressed by his results, they got hold of the president, and they went down to the factory, and he picked up some of their lenses, and they were doing them. They had some of their lenses in Leica screw mount, so he was able to use them on his Leicas, and he bought them, a complete set. June 25th, the Korean War broke out on a Sunday, and he was sent down with General MacArthur to photograph it. He started photographing the Korean War and was sending his images back. And Life magazine wanted to know why he was using a plate camera, because the quality of the lenses was so great. He said, "No, I'm using Nikon lenses." And this sort of word of mouth reputation grew. So you had people like Carl Meidens and Hank Walker, that were two photojournalists who were additionally covering the Korean War. They also bought Nikon lenses. Walker took a Nikon S body. It was a very cold winter. It was -30. And,
it is a cold winter.
And other cameras were freezing up, but not the Nikon S, which worked perfectly. Then there was a big furore in the New York Times. A review appeared, an article came out which said that these lenses made by this little-known company were superior to their German equivalents, and the head of Zeiss exploded with anger and said that this was propaganda, it was a lie, and unless they retracted the statement, which was written by a chap called Jacob Dacian, Zeiss would remove all their advertising. Fortunately, the New York Times did not back down, and then suddenly everyone was talking about it. So one man was responsible, really, for changing the face of the Japanese photo industry overnight. And David Douglas Duncan is worth a program all by himself, because he was not only a remarkable photographer, but a great writer too. If you ever see any of his books, he did write a book covering the Korean War called This Is War, which is a chilling book of the effect of war on soldiers. And he also became great friends with Picasso when he was living in the south of France. I always described him really as a poet with a camera. And for the 30th anniversary of our shop, Grays of Westminster, I was over the moon to get a copy of one of his books, the last book that he published, hand inscribed to me, congratulating us on our 30th anniversary, and I've got it in pride of place in my library.
Incredible.
When I went to Japan, the president took me up to his rather grand offices, and on the wall was this fabulous photo of Picasso standing outside his villa. Mm-hmm. And there's a rainbow going overhead, and it's hand inscribed by Duncan. And he said, "Look, Gray-san, this is Nikon's greatest unpaid PR man. He would not accept money, but we did give him the 200th. I'm trying to think of the number that he gave, but I think they gave him one. I think the serial number they put on it was DDD.
Oh, I see.
So a real rarity.
Yeah, well, you mentioned this. It's nowadays they would call him an influencer. You see, but I think he's a lot more than that.
Oh yeah, he was a giant, really, and well worth discussion. And this is something that I'm glad that I share in common with Joe McNally, who got to know Duncan and did the last ever filmed interview with him a couple of years before he died.
That was we watched it together.
We watched it together, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, with the today's day of advertising and influencers and everything, the proper working photographer, they die and breed. Like you look at, let's say, David Douglas Duncan, you look at Joe McNally. They're busy working than, being on social media like me, But yeah, that's the thing. It's, when we mention David Douglas Duncan, the name speaks for itself, isn't it? So that's... That's
right. And I think that's a very good observation of yours. He shares so much in common with someone like Joe McNally, and when you get to influencers, important ones like Seth Miranda and things are, they're not. They talk from experience.
Exactly.
They have real online experience, and when you listen to them, you can only respect them because they've done the research, they've done the work, and they're not. Like some influencers, slightly suspect.
That's true. I mean, the rest is entertainment, we would call it, isn't it?
Yeah, of a sort.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I agree. We should go to the full image, I think.
Yes, and which then kind of really leads us on to 1954, which was really going to what that gentleman was asking earlier about you've got the SM microscope.
Let's have a look. Let's find it. Here it is. Okay, yeah, should be up on the screen at this point.
Yeah.
Is the interview with DDT still available, Nick is asking? I think it's somewhere online, isn't it?
It is, actually, yes. I think if you just look up David Douglas Duncan interview, and it's on. I found it on YouTube the other day. Mm-hmm. If you don't find it, if you email me at Gray, Gray, at graysofwestminster.co.uk, I will send you the link.
Definitely. In the meantime, we're going to thank Gary Morrison. He said, "Good afternoon, everyone. Enjoy the coffee." And thank you, Brock, as well. He said, "Good morning from California."
Oh, good morning.
It's morning some way, it's evening some way.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
It's always 5 p.m. somewhere.
It's 5 p.m. somewhere. Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
All right, so that's a stereo microscope, I assume.
Absolutely. Another Tony Hurst shot there. Mm-hmm. And there was a whole microscope division. The reason why my experience is very thin with them, although I do own, I have got a stereo microscope, an original Nippon Kogaku one, is that people would go direct to Nikon for them. They weren't available, as certainly in this country, through retail establishments. It takes a special sort of skill and a special training to be able to talk to the sort of boffins that like to use these things.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the chart, and people just say, yeah, they want to know more about David Douglas Duncan. I think we should do a whole live stream at some point on him.
Yes, let's do that. I've got several of his books, and I can talk about his relationship with and friendship with Picasso, because it's an important thing, because he chronicled a lot of Picasso's work because they became very, very good friends.
And then it can open up to the whole series of live streams about photographers, because you in your professional life, you worked with quite a few of them.
Yeah. I was fortunate to. I was fortunate to meet. Remember, I don't know how many around the world will know this name, but one of the important photographers in the 60s was David Bailey, still really highly regarded, but he was a big breakthrough photographer and did some sensational stuff. And I was working at a camera shop called Fox Talbot in the Tottenham Court Road, which had a Nikon department. And the owner said to me one day, he said, we've got a visit from that dreadful Bailey character coming in today. And he said, you've got long hair and wear an earring. He said, he'll probably get on all right with you. He said, and he didn't kind of like cursing or anything like that. And, Bailey came in and was talking to me about a trip that he was doing overseas that was on a budget. So he had very little funds to take a whole bunch of assistants, And he said, what I need an exposure meter that's indestructible. And I said, well, the one that's supposed to be good is the Zeiss Icofot. I think I've got it right. And he said, well, how? And I said, well, and he took it. He said, follow me. And we went out into the side alley and he hurled it at this brick wall, and I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? And it bounced, landed on it, pick it up. He took a reading. He said, oh, it works. I'll take it.
Yeah, he's quite a character. I saw him at the photography show. He did a talk a few years ago, and he's quite a character, this man. Yeah, and
he signed one of my books, which I've still got in my collection. But they were real. They were real mavericks.
That's true.
Those guys, people like him and Duffy, Terence Donovan, Lord Snow. Right. So then there was the shutter curtains closed, right?
Let's have a look. And we're back.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody.
That's not new. It's part of the thrill everyone's waiting for. So, you know.
Well, at least we had a fully charged battery. So, Nikon F.
Yes. I've heard of that camera.
Have you?
Is that the one that started them all?
I tell you what, before we get to that,
Yes.
there's one I really would like to bring to your attention. We're talking about 1957
Yes.
and the Nikon Sky Camera.
Oh, right. Nikon Sky Camera. Let's get that one out. So we assume that's a Sky Camera that would be mounted under the plane?
No.
Is that what it was or not?
120 roll film.
Okay, I like that.
Fixed fisheye lens.
I
and
like
it was
that.
for photographing the sky and clouds.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Very, very few made. I think something like 5 or 6 have been known to be in collections. Again, if you come across one of these, I think you'll do quite well. And it's I've never seen one apart from this shot, which Mr. Ulikok kindly sent me from his book. But it's another one of those things where Nikon have made something or created something which is not in the mainstream and is part of, they obviously, they made, various things for specialized use and couldn't really get much more specialized than that, really, could you?
I really wish they would make 120 cameras.
I know. I think you're on a losing game here. I wish they'd made the Nikoflex as well.
That's true. We should put this in the comments because people want, I want Nikon Z9 Mark III, and say, I want a medium format camera
Yes,
from Nikon.
That's right.
The film Outlook only.
Well, of course, they did also make lenses for large format cameras.
They did, yes, and also for medium format cameras as well for Bronica.
That's right. The oh god, they were clunky beasts. Those Bronicas.
Are those Zenzas or
yeah. They were called the cameras were called Zenza Bronica, and they were a Japanese Hasselblad, really. But when you fired the shutter, you'd leap out of your skin because they were so loud compared to the really sort of almost Rolls-Royce click of the shutter on a Hasselblad 500C or CM.
Imagine you're in the forest, it's quiet, and then you take a shot and just birds start to fly from everywhere.
That's right. Down in the forest, something stirred.
Well, Pentax67 answers the chat. But
yeah. So
Nikon F. I mean, are we going to have time for Nikon F? It's 12. It's been an hour, Gray.
Right.
And I'm thinking we can talk for another hour, or shall we give them a taster and then we can have a Nikon F chat later?
Okay, let's do that.
Let's do that.
So let's show the presentation shot.
All right, let's get that.
This is going to be featured in the next issue 83 of Nikon Owner magazine, and it's a photograph that was taken at the official Nikon F presentation.
With all the influences at the back.
Yes, there we are.
The original ones.
Yeah. This was all the Japanese press of the time, and standing, I don't know if you can see it quite clearly, but standing to the right on the stage is, I believe, Mr. Fukita. And
as we all know, Nikon Fs are named after Mr. Fukita, allegedly.
Allegedly. And the design of those early logos, in fact, the design of the F was Kamakura. And we could do a program about Kamakura. A brilliant designer.
Yeah.
And he worked very closely with Nikon for a number of years, designed their boxes, designed their posters, designed their logos. I try and feature some of his work in Nikon Owner whenever I can find it. And this photograph here, I spent a few months liaising with Nikon Japan to be able to get hold of this so that we could show you. And then if we go to this shot, of a Nikon F, a very early example by Tony Hurst. It's got one of the earliest lenses. It's when lenses were marked in centimeters. In other words, the focal length, instead of 50 millimeters, it was 5 centimeter f2. And these are known as tick mark lenses, which I'll explain on another occasion, really. But
I have a question for you about the serial number. It says 6400553. That's the early one.
It's the first block, because they started off with 6400001.
Oh, I see.
In 1959.
So it is very
carried
close.
on into the early 60s. So when people used to say, oh, well, my camera came out in 1966 because it has a 660 number, that's not correct. It's an easy error to make, but it's not true. So we've got that very lovely one there.
If you would have to purchase a Nikon F for your collection, which one would it be? Would it be a photomic? Would it be a plain prism? What is your personal choice?
Plain prism.
Plain prism.
I love the look of that pyramid prism. In fact, we can't show you here because it's in a display case opposite in my office here. I've got a black Nikon F plain prism on an F36 motor drive. It's very, very battered. It's had a long life, and I have it serviced every few years to make sure it'll still work. But that would be my favorite. I wouldn't mind finding a new one, but
we had a new one at some point, didn't we? 5K.
We've got one now.
Ah,
We've got one now.
We've got one now. Okay. Well, Anti-Hater says my aunt had the serial number 6400100.
Oh,
She can probably buy a piece of land with that.
she could do very well. Does she still have it, or is it gone?
That's a good question, Andy. If you let us know, that would be great. And Neil is asking, where can I have my Nikon F checked and serviced? What are the places?
Whereabouts are you based?
Yeah. Well, he's asking us, I assume, as well. So maybe he's UK based. So let's say if it would be in the UK.
Well, I would go to the gentleman that we used, Creton. Again, if you email gray@graysofwestminster.co.uk, I will send you his details. He does all our early work, and he is exceptional, an exceptional service agent with a very, 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 very long history of working with Nikon Japan. And in fact, produced some lenses for them on behalf of one of the world's air forces that they wanted particular lenses. Nikon supplied him with the glass to make the lenses for them. So he's an extraordinary guy.
Yeah, so Joe Locke says just about Nikon F that it's such a beautiful piece of engineering. And then Robert Holloway saying, thinking of setting up 25,000 of Z gear and staying with film plus developing and printing. I blame you, Gray, for this live stream.
Right.
And I welcome you to the analog world, Robert. So this is all we have for today. I think it's going to become a series where we're going to talk about Nikon history. So we're going to stop on Nikon F and then move up to the latest and greatest. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great week, everyone. If you haven't liked this live stream, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Thank you very much, Gray. I appreciate your talk today.
Well, thank you. And thank you for everybody for listening in. Don't forget, subscribe to Nikon Owner. You'll make a lot of people very happy.
Content.
And we'd love to see some of your work too. So have a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.